Welcome back to the Life Currency Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Lozano, and we have a special treat for you. We're revisiting powerful voices from TEDx McAllen, a token series. Get ready for some life currency. Mark, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. Fun day today.
In the morning I was a little anxious before my talk, but right now I'm just enjoying the moment.
Yeah, that's good, man. Well, I wanna get your perspective on a few different thoughts. But right now, let's start with so successful banker, right? You're doing great, young, making money, doing a good job, and then this sudden shift. Can you kind of walk us through that? What happens there?
Yeah, so I was working at a local bank. I was a vice president. I was doing really, really well. Like in my age bracket, I was top 1%, right? I was doing a job that I wanted to do for a long time. I wanted to lead a team, but when I wanted to innovate, when I wanted to change things in the company, there was always like bureaucracy of like, hey, we've always done things this way. And it was just something that I couldn't accept. And I grew up with the mantra, like, why climb the corporate ladder when you can own it? And so I always had that mindset, and I remember it vividly. I would show up to the office every day at 6:30 a.m. because that's when the CEO would show up. And so I always liked greeting him at the door, and I wanted him to know that I was in the building when he was in the building. And so I came into the bank. It was like a Tuesday, and I was sitting there, and I was like, you know what? I'm done. Like, I want to take another direction. And I literally wrote him a email, and I said, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for your time. I'm not going to another bank. I'm going a different direction, you know? And so right after that, I transitioned into real estate. And because my background was in commercial lending, you know, I ended up in commercial real estate. And it was a hurdle. Like it was a tough 3 years. I mean, I went from consistent income to no consistency, but every single day that I showed up to the job, I was happy. I was at peace. You know, I had no money coming in, but I knew that if I worked hard, that I could get there.
Yeah.
And, I fell on my face a lot of times, like a lot of entrepreneurs when they first start, but I just didn't give up. And so that's how I transitioned from banking to real estate.
That's a good story. I like that. It has a lot of I guess power. There's a lot. I can sense a sense of powerfulness from what you're saying. But I'm curious about. You said you met him at the door, right? That's pretty intense. Where'd you get that intensity from, or what you wanted to, right? That mindset. Where do you get that from?
Well, I don't know if I got it necessarily from any one thing. All I knew that he was the decision maker, and he could have the power to elevate my position or demote my position, right? And so ultimately, you always want to be speaking to whoever the decision makers are at every level of business, right? When you're talking to someone and you're like, okay, I'm going to deliver the message to my boss. It's like, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the boss. And so I wanted the CEO to know that, you know, maybe not CEO material at the time, but, you know, maybe right hand, left hand, I could grow. The first bank that I worked at, I used to tell the president of the bank, you're the carpenter, I'm the hammer. Use me as your tool. Like whatever you need to get done, like I want to get it done. But this was coming from like a 19-year-old that had no gray hairs, that didn't really know a lot. But when you have that attitude, it's like, well, let's bring him in, let's mold him, let's grow him. But that's not always what happens in the corporate world. In the corporate world, when people see something different, something that can shoot up, they see competition. They see, you know, this person could stop me from getting to where I want to get. And it was, you know, a few years after that of experiencing that kind of culture that in different banks, it wasn't just one bank, that I just said, you know what, I don't want to be there anymore. I want to lift people up. I want to be around people that want the best for me, like I want the best for them. So yeah, but to answer your question about like meeting the CEO at the door, like it wasn't anything that someone taught me. I probably read it in a book, some way, shape, or form. But I just wanted him to know that I existed and that what I was doing was making an impact on his leadership.
Sure. Yeah, I believe inspiration is a real thing, but a lot of people use a lot of motivation. I think discipline really trumps motivation in a lot of ways. And it seems like you just had a very logical correlation with, I want X, so I need to be X and here, right, at this time. And so I like that. You're a pretty logical person.
I've become more logical with age, right? Like when I was young, it was like I could conquer the world, and at 25, I'm going to be on a yacht, and over time, as I've grown in my career in commercial real estate's all about data. It's numbers. Numbers add up or they don't, right? Obviously, there's things that you can do to get creative to make the numbers work, and that's where our specialty comes from. But ultimately, it's all about logic. And I realized that almost all of the business people that I looked up to, all of them, it was just, they had an algorithm. Like it added up. There was no secret sauce or anything. Hard work, right place, right time, good networking, show up every day. Like it was very straightforward. So, yeah.
So at that time, you're moving over. You're starting your own commercial real estate. You talked a little bit about how the corporate world versus your new world. How did you begin to start instilling a company culture that you were proud of?
Well, before the company was started, Hanna Solutions, our brokerage, I was with two different brokerages, and so I learned like what I didn't want first, right? Like, oh, I definitely don't want this, right? And I learned to define what I thought I needed to be successful, right? And so to me, whether it's company culture, family culture, your friends, I believe that everyone around you should lift you up, right? And if they're not lifting you up, there's some type of negativity or jealousy or something there. And I'm not a doctor, but I know that when someone has cancer, the doctor doesn't say like, well, let's see how it goes, give them a chance, right? No, the doctor says we're cutting that crap out.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And so I've learned in my life to just everything around me, company culture, family culture, friends. I want to be a good friend, and I try to show people how I want them to be my friend, right? And so if someone has something negative to say, whether it's at work, family, home, I'm like, not about it. The company, right now, our goal is, we have two new goals in 2025. We're transitioning this next year. We're going to make a few announcements. We are going to be affiliating with a bigger national brand. And so I was telling the team, I've got two goals. I want to be number one in market share, right? Which is going to be very difficult to do. And the fact that I'm telling you this right now, and it's going to be put on blast, like there's going to be checks and balances. People are going to hold me accountable. But if we end up number two, it's not a bad place, right? The second thing is I want to be the best place for a broker to work. Because I believe if we're the best place, if we're focusing on gaining market share, if we're focusing on being the best place to work, everything else will solve itself.
Yeah. How are you going to make it the best place?
Well, it's about giving them the tools and resources to be successful.
Yeah.
Sharing the knowledge. Most of the time when people come into brokerage offices, they give you a book, they might give you some videos, here, watch this. But it's very rare that people teach you like the details and introduce you and even share deals with you. And so we've been very blessed that it hasn't been very difficult for us to bring in business. The hard part has been to handle and service all the business properly.
Yeah, I really like that because that's exactly what life currency is about, right? Is sharing everything that you know or are learning to be able to help someone's life or career, right?
Yeah.
So I think that definitely is a differentiator at the end of the day. Just to be able to know that you have leadership and somebody that cares, right? At the end of the day, and wants their future to also propel. So I love that, man. Well, I think KPIs are a big thing, goals are a big thing, but I love the vision. I love the vision. Let's get into so there's kind of this theory right now with real estate about a lot of remote work, a lot of data. You talked about a lot of technology. How are you handling the human connection part of it, right? Not switching from internal to external, right? Client based. Like, are you still adamant about having that connection, or are you really kind of more leveraging technology or a mixture? Can you speak towards that?
Yeah, so we definitely leverage technology and data. We spend a lot of money on all sorts of softwares. Ultimately, I've had clients that I close deals with out of New York, out of California that I never meet.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like on a Zoom call, and they sign remotely, so I don't even meet them when they buy the property. But people work with us because of our reputation. People work with us because they're recommended. And so we've been very blessed that when people come to work with us, there's already like trust. And so like the first impression, I just got to solidify the trust. And so we do that with technology by, having solid website, social media presence. And when people ask us questions about real estate, it's never like, I think that's a good idea. It's the market data supports it or doesn't. The other day I was helping a client that was looking at a building. It was a triple net lease building, and FedEx is leasing the building for sale, 6.4 cap rate. And the buyer's coming here and saying, hey, I think I like this property, but they only have 5 years on the initial term left. And then they have an option to extend another 5 years, right? And so they had worked with another broker, and the broker said, well, it's a risk. You let me know if you want to take it. And so that's a normal response for someone that doesn't make decisions based on data. What we did was we got on Placer AI, which Placer AI is a system that uses geofencing to track how many people go in and out of a business. And I looked at the FedEx and I looked and said, okay, there's 2,948 FedEx stores like this in the country. Out of these 2,948 stores, this store is 331 in the country. And then I said, okay, out of Texas, there's like 248, and this one's number 21.
You're looking at revenue, traffic.
We're looking at the growth of the store based on, like revenue.
Yeah,
basically.
throughput okay. Yeah, sure.
And so it's basically the ranking of their stores.
Got it.
Yeah, in success, right? And so I printed out that report and I showed it to the buyer, and I basically said, okay, FedEx is a big company, and you're right, it is a risk. But if we're taking a calculated risk, based on this, it's one of their top performing stores nationwide and statewide. Do you think that they're more likely to renew their lease because it's a top performing store? Or do you think that they'd walk away from that? It's like, well, no, they'd probably renew it. Okay, well, there's your answer. And then on top of that, it's about, okay, well, let's say that they leave. Well, what are comparables looking like? Like, what could I rent it for if they did leave? And I'm like, actually, if they left, it would be a blessing in disguise because they're under market in rent because they locked down the lease, 15 years ago. So if they left, you could probably increase your revenue. Your cap rate probably go to 9%. And so that's just an example of us using data to make decisions. And it was like literally like the client was going back and forth for 3 weeks. Do I make an offer? Do I move forward or not? Met with them for 30 minutes. They're like, submit the offer. And I didn't tell them, do it because it's in my best interest or do it because I feel right. It's a great deal. I did it with data. And so when I put data together, sometimes I'll say like, you know what? I don't think this is the right decision. I mean, and keep in mind, if we don't close deals, we don't get paid. Yeah, but sure. We're ultimately focused on the relationship. I don't want to close one deal with someone. I want to close every deal. And so that's what we look for when we're servicing our clients and making sure that we're focused on the long term.
You jumped right into a topic that I wanted to get into. What would you tell, our listeners about or realtors, brokers, anyone that's trying to look at commercial real estate? What would you tell them on how to evaluate a relationship versus just a business case, and how do you find that balance?
Yeah, so it's really difficult. Since I was in banking, commercial lending is like, they're always like, it's about relationships, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was very blessed to have that foundation that I learned early on the importance of a relationship. In commercial real estate in the brokerage game, it's there, but it's not the same. Brokers close a lot of deals, and you close one deal this year and that buyer probably won't buy another property till next year, right? So you got to go and focus on closing other deals. And so sometimes brokers forget about the relationship. They forget to make that connection, to say, hey, happy birthday. Hey, your kid had their first T-ball game. I saw it on your LinkedIn post or on a Facebook post. How's that going? There's a beyond connection than just like the service, right? I always just focus on, giving positive energy, being dependable, being consistent. And my hope is that they work with me again. But I don't have a perfect track record. I have clients that don't work with me again, right? They go work somewhere else. But it's not because I didn't go over and beyond. It's because they didn't like the data that I gave them. Or
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell them, hey, your property's worth $1 million, which is a lie. I told them the truth. And sometimes telling the truth to the client, they don't like the truth. And so they say, okay, well, let me go look somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, we have a fiduciary duty to operate in a way that our clients, like 5-10 years back, they're going to say, like, I'm so glad I bought that property. I'm so glad I leased that property to that tenant. It's not a perfect world. Things happen, but we can make calculated decisions. And so, I mean, that's what life's about, is just making the calculated decision and hoping that it works out.
Yeah, I like that. You know, a lot of our listeners, they're looking to grow multi-unit businesses and trying to scale their operations. Do you work with anybody that's looking for multiple pad sites, or kind of have a growth plan in place already? Or
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of clients that say, they've got goals, right? We don't work with a lot of franchisees. We work more with developers who are building like retail plazas, mixed use projects. And so, I mean, I've got clients that say, hey, Mark, I'm looking for good deals. I'm looking for good deals. And I'm like, who isn't? Like, get in line. Everyone's looking for a good deal, right? Like, and sometimes it's like, oh, I would buy that property, but, it's a little too expensive. What I always explain to people is like, every day that let's say someone has a substantial amount of money and they're looking to invest it into an income producing property. They have it in the bank, right? And the bank's not really paying them a lot. I tell them, every day that you have that capital just sitting there, you're losing. The bank's making money off of you. You're losing. Your dollar's losing value. So that property, you might not be able to get it at the price that you want. You might have to pay full price or close to it, but you're in the game. You can't swim tippy-toeing into the pool. You got to jump in. And so, Barbara Cochran, right? Shark Tank. She's like, oh, I always overpay for properties. She's like, but at the end, I own them. And if you're not looking to sell it right away, you can learn to retrieve that value. And people need to look, in commercial real estate, it's not just about the rent revenue that comes from it. It's the indirect incentives of real estate that are awesome. You can depreciate your interest expense, you can depreciate the property, and then you have a return on the property. So when I add those three things up, like the FedEx building, 6.4 cap rate, I add, depreciation, I add the interest expense back. Well, guess what? I'm at an 8.5 cap rate now. That's an above market cap rate. That's a great cap rate. And it's only because we used our experience to put it together so that our client could understood, oh, wow, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. And so we're not doing anything like extravagant. We're just doing things that other people aren't doing because they don't look at it through the same lens.
yeah, I like that. And a lot of that stems probably from a long-term vision, right? A committed passion towards a career. I like the way you look at that. Let's circle back around to the culture piece, because I think that's really important. Something that we talk about often is non-negotiables. You got any non-negotiables for yourself? You kind of alluded to, hey, this is what I want and this is what I don't want. Get what I don't want out. So what are some non-negotiables that you can share?
Well, I really, I take my kids to school every morning, right? A lot of times I get to pick them up from school. They've got t-ball practice, or they just want to play. My kids and my time with them, it's like non-negotiable. I've got top clients, that are calling me right before my son has basketball practice. And most aggressive brokers would drop that and say, hold on, son, daughter, let me get this. This is important. What I do is I learned to basically tell my clients, this is something that's very important to me and it's non-negotiable. It doesn't mean that I'm ignoring you, but it's like 6 p.m. in the afternoon.
Sure.
Banks are closed, title companies are closed. Our conversation isn't gonna, if we don't talk tonight, it's not a deal killer, right? And so my family, like my time with them, it's a non-negotiable. Like I'm not going to sacrifice my family and me not being around for a client. I don't really do a lot of those, late night, let's meet at 5:30, have a drink. And I've had lots of clients that do that. And it's not that I don't necessarily want to, it's just that my family needs me, right? Like my kids are only young for a certain amount of time, right? And I don't want it to be like, yeah, dad was always working. So I want them to know, yeah, dad was always working, but he was always present. And so like my family's big on I'm very big non-negotiable, families first,
You
right?
ever thought about homeschooling?
I haven't thought about it because, between me and my wife, I'm like, who's going to homeschool them, right? um, I will say that every single day, they're learning at home. They're learning how to do things that I learned when I was little. I hand them um, screwdrivers and hammers and saws and wood and bricks, and it's like, hey, let's have fun. I have my best friend's parents that live down the street from us, and in my backyard, like we've got like turf, and my wife has done a really good job at like making sure the backyard looks really nice.
Nice.
So when my sons want to play in the backyard and dig and stuff, we walk down the street to my best friend's parents' house. And so their house, their backyard is full of these big holes. My sons like grab the hose and build lakes and making little towns and stuff. Every day that I drive around, I'm pointing at buildings and saying like, Daddy wants a building like that. And I'm reminding them like, hey, one day you're going to grow up and work with Dad. It's like, yeah, I'm going to work with Dad. Hey, Marcelo, you want to work with Dad? Yeah, I want to work with Dad.
That's cool, man.
So homeschool, like, I see why a lot of people do it, but to me, it's really difficult because you give up the social connection, right? I think kids socially right now, they focus on looking at their phones, the iPad kids. And like my kids, I don't think they watch a lot of TV, right? In the evenings, but my wife says they watch way too much TV. It's only a couple hours like in the evening. I see other kids that like live in front of the TV, and you can tell when they're in public in social settings. They're not talking to each other or they're shy, and so my kids aren't in public school right now. They're at a private school called Albatros, and they only speak Spanish there. I want them to pick up fluent Spanish, proper Spanish, and after that, they'll probably go to public school like I did, like my wife did. I think about, someone asked me, one of my best friends, like, hey, you going to send them to, the middle school that we went to? I'm not going to mention it out loud. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm not going to do that. In middle school, there was a new school that was built, and that new school that was built, we used to call it the rich kid school, right? They had the nice gym and everything. And well, guess what? As an adult, guess where I want to send my kid? I'm sending my kid to that school, right? And so I think as a parent, it's totally understandable to want the best for your kid, but I think that they're eventually going to have to experience real life.
Sure.
And the longer that you shield them from that, it's a detriment. The sooner that you expose them to it and you teach them how to react and how to, conquer those moments, the better they'll be later in life.
Well said. We're going through a time where market prices have changed, valuations have changed, cap rates have changed. Well, I mean, I guess some of them have floated up, but how are you evaluating that change, and does that present a challenge to be able to communicate expectations for buyers or sellers right now? And can you kind of speak a little bit towards that?
Yeah, so right now it's really interesting. The Federal Reserve recently lowered the federal lending rate 50 basis points, and they expect it to happen another 50 basis points between here and the end of the year. The Federal Reserve, they've got a meeting November 6th and 7th, and then December 17th and 18th. And so it's either going to be 25 basis points in November and another 25 in December, or it's going to be 50 basis points in November. But even a total 1% drop this year, it's really not moving the needle. Meaning, the Federal Reserve balances, two things, right? Like unemployment and inflation. And so inflation was going up, right? And, unemployment is down, right? We're doing good. Well, no, not when inflation is high. And so the Federal Reserve began to raise interest rates and slow things down. So inflation started to slow down, but guess what? Unemployment starts going up. People can't pay the same thing when interest rates go up. So businesses have to lay people off and unemployment rate goes up. And so that being said, right now we're like at the perfect balance, and they're going to start reducing rates. So I've been having these conversations with clients, and they're saying, hey, should I wait until next year to buy something? Interest rates are going to go down. Well, if that property that you like that's super hot and sought after is going to be around, yeah, maybe. But interest rates are always interest rates, and the cost of doing business is always going to be the cost of doing business. If my, cost is $1, and it goes up to $1.25, that means I got to move up my price. I mean, you're a business owner. It happens. The cost of milk goes up. I mean, the breakfast is going to go up. And so I think it's always adjusted. And it goes back to like the logic of, if you want to be in the game, you got to jump in. You got to play no matter. I mean, in the 80s, rates were 15, 18%, yeah. 15, 18%. And was it that there was no successful entrepreneurs? No, they just adjusted the margin and people pay the cost. So I ultimately focus on getting deals done, focusing on the true value. People like to focus on the costs. How much does it cost? Oh, well, that's too much. Well, what if I'm giving you all this value? Is that still the cost? So I focus on value. If the value's there, like Warren Buffett, he analyzes companies and would invest in things that just make sense to him. And he's always like, well, I'm looking at the value. A lot of people never understood how he did that. It's like, well, chewing gum, Coca-Cola, American Airlines, Bank of America. Like, these are things that are timeless, and I don't think they're going to go out of style. And those are the types of things that he invested in. You forgot one. Which one? Dairy Queen. Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, man. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean, though.
Yeah, so, like value, if you focus on value, if you're always focusing on the cost, if you're always focusing on what can go wrong, law of attraction, that's what happens. Things are going to go wrong.
Yeah. Do you think you'll do more deals in person or more remote deals? Do you have a target, or that's just kind of...
No, I don't have a target. My hope is to always meet the client. But, if I don't ever have to meet the client and I start closing more deals and it's just from phone calls, I will not be mad.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I at the end of the day, it's about getting the deal done, and information is shared back and forth. And so, when a client meets me, it doesn't make them want to buy the property more.
I like that perspective, right? It's still got to be a good deal, right?
Yeah, the numbers work or they don't. I don't care what you look like, Mark.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I like that perspective. So, I feel like the real estate industry or commercial real estate has been associated a lot of, kind of cliche, but that hustle culture mentality. Do you believe in that, or what's your outtake on that?
It is a hustle business. When you look at residential versus commercial, the best of the best in commercial, they're very intelligent people. You have CCIMs, you have SIORs, you have people with masters in business, you have people managing billion-dollar funds. They didn't get there because they weren't smart. And so it's a beautiful thing being able to go back and forth with other hustlers who just know their stuff. Like, I go back to this FedEx deal. The other broker on the other side, I commend him. I applaud him for defending his sales price, for his client, and working with him, sharing the data and the facts. Like, hey, give me the lease, give me all of the facts, because if you provide the facts to me, I want to get this deal done too, right? Mm-hmm. But the facts have to add up. And so when you have people like that sharing information, it makes a lot of sense. There's people out there, brokers that, they're hustlers, right? And they try to play that game, I'm a hustler, and they don't share information and they don't cooperate. In order to close a deal, you got to cooperate with other people. You want to close more deals, you got to cooperate with more people.
Where do you think that stems from, that they don't share?
They probably were not taught properly, and they probably don't understand that they can close more deals by working with others and opening the doors. If you're selling a property, like when I list a property, I tell everyone, like, it's my job to tell every single person that I know about your property. That's my job every single day. And so if I don't talk to a lot of people, and if I don't network, and if I'm not friendly, right, who's going to want to bring an offer on the property? I'm doing a disservice to my client by being a jerk.
It's a good point. Do you believe in, what do you tell your clients when they say, I don't really want to sell something, but I want to list it, just put it at a high price?
I don't normally do that. If they'll say, well, if it sells, it sells. I make money when I sell properties, and I'm not going to put a property on the market to see if it sells. If I put it on the market, it's based on data, and I know that from a calculated standpoint, there's a buyer somewhere, and I just need to find them. Mm-hmm. But if I'm putting it out there and the price is just ridiculous. In the past, I've done that before, and you end up just looking like a failure. You put it on the market and everyone's saying like, hey, it's overpriced, etc. And so I think with experience, you learn what relationships are income producing, like people work with me because I perform, right? Well, I also want to work with a client that performs as well. Do they understand data? If I tell them some facts, not that I'm, coming up with, but that the market's producing, are they going to trust it, or are they just illogical? If they're illogical, we're both wasting each other's time.
Have you ever told somebody that you don't want to work with them?
I haven't told anyone that I didn't want to work with them. I've told people that at this time we can't take on this project, which is a much nicer way of saying it.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. I think it's important, right? Boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah.
You believe in the metaverse?
Like Facebook?
Digital properties
I don't know enough about it. I know that there's been a lot of money invested. I'm really old school. When I talk to clients and like we're looking at a property, I'm like, hey, let's go touch the dirt. And they're like, what are you talking about? No, like let's go touch the dirt. Let's go feel it, right? That's what it's about. If I have clients that are not here locally, most of the time I send them videos, 3D Matterports. Like I want them to feel like they can see every single aspect of the property as if they weren't here, because it makes it that much easier, right? California and New York buyers look at our South Texas market and they're like, $1 million, that's it? That's how much my garage costs, right? And so if I'm able to bring more of those clients here, like it's a success for my clients, right? And so we focus on packaging the property digitally, right? 3D Matterports, drone photos, as much as we can to get them there. But the metaverse, I mean, I can't touch that dirt. So like
yeah, a little different.
I just don't understand. I'm not saying that there's no value. It's just I've learned over
there's transactions, right?
Yeah. I've just learned to go with what I know.
Yeah, sure.
And it's just not, I don't know it enough.
Yeah.
But I'll probably look into it after this.
That's interesting. It'd be an interesting day if Mark Hanna does a deal on the internet, right? Digital property.
Man. Hey, if I could
you're going to have to give me a call then.
Yeah, I know, right? Referral fee.
Yeah, that's too funny. That's too funny. No, man, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I like your outlook. And I appreciate you sharing. I think it's really important as leaders that we try to share everything and anything. It seems like ultimately you're a calculated individual, but you kind of have this like fearlessness, which I like, and I can empathize with. And I think maybe it's not even fearlessness. It could probably translate to like a confidence in your work, so kudos to you on that, man.
I appreciate that. I mean, if we don't believe in ourselves, who else will? I mean, it just comes down to that. I try to remind myself like that I have a bigger purpose. It's not about me. I have a family to provide for. I have my 2 sons that are watching me, and I want them to look and see like the good things, right? And so my focus is just being a good example every single day, and ultimately enjoying life. Like I enjoy living life.
Yeah, that's definitely a good motto.
Yeah,
life's short, man. We got to enjoy it for sure. You like what you do?
I love what I do. I've never been happier. Great. I can't envisioning myself doing anything different. The only thing is probably better deals, right? In the last couple of years, we've been very fortunate to dabble into our own development projects. Mm-hmm. And, I want to keep doing that and keep helping people, build wealth through real estate.
Well, I'm glad you like what you do. I definitely enjoyed this conversation, man. And I look forward to talking again. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Yep.